Welcome to the Heroic Investing Show. As first responders, we risk our lives every day. Our financial security is under attack. Our pensions are in a state of emergency. A single on-duty incident can alter or erase our earning potential instantly and forever. We are the heroes of society. We are self-reliant and we need to take care of our own financial future. The Heroic Investing Show is our toolkit of business and investing tactics on our mission to financial freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 161 of the Heroic Investing Show. This is a podcast, as you know, for first responders, members of the military, veterans, and anyone looking to improve their financial future and gain some freedom with their time. We teach America's heroes how to build passive income, build their startup business, and safely grow wealth through real estate and other alternative investments. My name is Gary Pinkerton, and here just after Thanksgiving, I'm co-hosting this show with a lot of gratitude with Jason Hartman, and hopefully helping inspire you to a much greater and more exciting life. So I took a lot of time on Thanksgiving Day and here the day after Thanksgiving as I record this to just kind of think about the past year and think about what has made me grateful. And 3 books that I'm reading right now have really consolidated that in my mind. And I mean, they're on top of my mind because I'm reading them or have recently read them. And I do a lot of my reading on Audible. So I'm actually, reading them for the second or third time. And they're all pieces to the story of why I'm so much more a grateful person than I have been in years past. And so here, let me tell you what these books are. So the first one is The Inside Out Revolution, and that's by Michael Neal. And this was recommended to me by a client of mine that I met a couple of months ago. It's a great book. I've listened to it 3 times now. And really what this book talks about is it is a unique way, a revolutionary approach built around 3 simple principles to help explain, where our feelings come from and how that generates our experiences, and then how we can use that understanding to transform our lives. So it's really an understanding or an explanation that, most people react to their environment. And, I'm using the words that Zig Ziglar used many, many times if you were a follower of Zig. And he used to say that the people used to react. And if you go into a doctor's office and the doctor gives you medication, if you're reacting to the medication, then that means he's nervous and he's changing the medication. He's putting you under, he's monitoring you for a while to make sure that your body doesn't react too badly. So it's a negative thing, right? And what they want your body to do is to respond to the medication. And so it's exactly what the author, Michael Neal, does with this book, is he explains that most people react to their environment. And what he pushes us to do is respond to our inner beliefs, our inner, our why, basically, right? And so understand where the manifestation of our outside reality comes from. So we get to choose how we respond to the outside. So stop reacting and start responding, and respond in a way that serves you. So respond not because you've been harmed by your environment, but respond because your response is going to serve that inner goal of yours, your values, your beliefs, and your intent on what you're trying to do in your world. So, you get to choose. That's the big message. You get to choose. The next book is The Obstacle is the Way, and that's by Ryan Holiday. And this is a great book that actually Robert Kiyosaki put me on to when we were on the Real Estate Guys Investor Summit at Sea this spring. The Obstacle is a Way, or is the way, is a book that, let me summarize this one. Ryan Holiday does a great job writing this one. And, essentially he talks about, well, let's use the little parable that's in the book to help out. So he talks about a king who, trying to wake up his citizens, puts a large boulder in the middle of the road such that no one can really go around it. And everyone comes up to it, turns and leaves, comes up to it, turns and leaves. And finally, this peasant shows up, one of the lowest members of his people, and instead of just stopping, giving up, and going back, he figures out a way to use a lever that he finds in the woods and roll this boulder out of the way, right? And he was highly enriched from having done so. So that's really kind of a metaphor for life, right? So if we come up against boulders and turn and just go away and give up, then we've missed the opportunity to learn from that episode, right? So I've done some investments, for example, that completely lost me all of my money. But they have been really, really inexpensive lessons when I get down to what did they really teach me, right? And so if you see every obstacle in your life as a gift, then first of all, going back to the first book we talked about, it helps you respond in a constructive way and learn from it and actually become a better person because of it. I mean, listen, the obstacle's there. It happened. You're not going to get around that one, right? So now how do you respond to it? And how do you want to use it as a learning experience, or do you just want to use it as a reason, an excuse that you can't achieve where you were headed and to give up and turn and go back to the village, right? So that's not all that's in the book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's a tremendous book. But that's one piece of it. And then the third one is Willpower Doesn't Work. And this is by Benjamin Hardy. And I owe Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach credit for putting me onto this book. Another, really good book. And I'll start by saying that I'm not completely through this one yet. This is the hard copy version that I'm the one of the three that's in hard copy that I'm working through right now. It's a great book, though. And at least the parts that I've read so far make it well worth reading already. And what Benjamin talks in here about is how to quickly put yourself in proximity to the most successful people in the world and how to adapt their knowledge and skills to yourself even quicker. And then, another thing that he does is teaches you how to create an environment where endless creativity and boundless productivity is the norm. So he's helping you, again, shape your environment. So putting those three books together, as I was explaining earlier at the beginning, or I was trying to say at the beginning, understand from an inside out revolution that, your environment really comes from your response to sensations you get and comes from your inside, from your belief, because you are actually creating it. Then there's obstacles out there that you've created to learn from, right? Or that were created for you, and you should learn from them and grow and become a better person. And then, Benjamin Hardy's acknowledgement or his lessons that willpower itself is not enough. You have to create that environment. You have to surround yourself, as Jim Rohn says, with the 5 people that you want to be most alike. And once you've envisioned an environment and created it and then learned from the obstacles, I think you'll go a long ways in life. So that's what I credit, kind of taking some of those lessons this past year, surrounding myself with just some amazing, incredible close friends that I have learned a tremendous amount from, looking at every challenge in life as an obstacle that can be overcome and that I'm supposed to learn from, and starting to listen to my inner voice a lot more, I think has made a tremendous impact on my life and is starting to show lots of fruit. So that's my advice for you. And normally you do this kind of stuff in January, so we gotta jump on it here in November. But I took it from the perspective of being very, very grateful for a life that is just a very blessed life. So I appreciate all of you out there that are friends of mine and that are listeners. I think we're going to have a great few decades ahead of us. So I look forward to being with all of you. So on this podcast, what are we going to talk about? Well, as you know, my wife Sue and I purchased a short-term rental, and we ran one of Jason's short-term rental podcast episodes recently, and I got some good feedback on that, and I've also learned some more in my own short-term rental experience already. And so I thought it would be helpful to run a couple more episodes. So I'll sprinkle those in here, and then after about the three kind of best of the best ones, I'll move back to more long-term rentals and more tax type topics, asset protection and things. This is a really good topic. This episode is Jason interviewing a young lady that I've got to know recently, a few months ago. She's really an impressive individual, and she's done an amazing amount of stuff in her life already. Her name is Flavia Berys, and just really an incredible person. Jason goes into a little bit of her background, and then they do the episode for about 20 or 25 minutes. And my takeaways from the episode, things that I'd like you to listen to and think about, things that I've also personally already experienced in my short-term rental preparations for our house, and just things that I've learned as we've started to walk through the first couple of tenants. She talks about here, and it's really kind of interesting. Like, there are differences between short-term rental and long-term rental. And one of the things that she brings up is that it's not so much how long they stay, but it's the differences between having a furnished place and an unfurnished place. because you have the ability to, for example, in a furnished place, garner higher rents and have different type of person, somebody looking to stay for a different reason, right? It's more of a hotel type guest, but it could be a long-term stay hotel guest. She makes an example of like traveling nurses. So, and then there's different websites that help you there. So you don't necessarily have to be short-term rental on Airbnb. You could be monthly rental with a furnished apartment or a furnished house and getting much higher rent. So taking it as a little bit more of a different spin, I thought was pretty interesting. And she also talks about technology, about different ways to approach getting better customer feedback and better ratings. And so a little bit of a mixture of that, of some zoning and regulations and things that I think you'll find interesting. But if nothing else, it'll introduce you to a really tremendous lady, Flavia Berys. And Flavia is from San Diego. As I mentioned, I had a chance to talk with her and meet her a few months ago. Really, really impressive individual. In her short life, she is an author, she's an attorney, real estate broker, business consultant. And as I mentioned, she's out of Southern California. When she was in college and before, she did cheerleading, was a professional cheerleader for a couple of years with the San Diego Chargers. And she's written a lot of books on the subject about how to do that professionally. She has a bunch of fitness books that she has done, and she has done corporate law. She has done real estate law and owns rental properties, both short-term and long-term rentals. And then with her current clients, she describes herself as a small business lawyer, helping entrepreneurs and real estate investors protect and grow their businesses so that they feel less stressed and more successful. So I really think you're going to enjoy this. Like I said, if nothing else, check out Flavia and all that she has done and use it as an inspiration to go to a higher level, because clearly there are people who are out there like Flavia working really hard and making a big difference and doing a lot in a very short period of time. It's really inspirational when I see that happen. So I think you will agree. Next episode, we have another interview with a great individual that I recently worked with. And then I'm going to kind of sprinkle for a little while here, back and forth, Jason interview and my interviews. And we've just got a lot of great ones in the hopper here ready to go. So I went for a long string there of just people that I had interviewed. I kind of got them backlogged a little bit. And I want to make sure I gave them an opportunity to get their incredible message out there and, not have it backlogged so long for them. So appreciate you allowing me to kind of hammer through those. I thought there were some great interviews. I got a lot of good feedback, especially on the one with the Redmond here coming up, the most recent one. So an amazing guy. What a hero. So thank you. And I think you're going to enjoy this with Flavia. And we'll be back next week with another original interview. Going to have some fun here. Thanks so much. And again, because of Thanksgiving, I want to just repeat one more time. I'm very thankful for having all of you around and look forward to many, many more great podcasts together.
It's my pleasure to welcome Flavia Berys to the show. She is a real estate attorney. She's host of the Lifestyle Solopreneur podcast. She also runs an education portal, I believe it is called Landlord Prep, and has some great background in short-term rentals, and as an attorney can tell us about some of the issues and litigation going on very generally around the world, frankly, with short-term rentals. And let's kind of dive in. Flavia, welcome. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me on the show, Jason. Really excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. And give our listeners a sense of geography. Where are you located today?
I am in the beautiful, sunny San Diego, California area.
Yes. And we had this little conversation off air about how you want to follow in my footsteps, which I recommend in moving to a no income tax state someday.
Absolutely. Or, if we can convince more states to sort of adopt that, wouldn't that be great? Give us more options.
Flavia, it's very interesting you brought that up, because I've been doing quite a few discussions on my various shows about the GOP tax reform. And I think that it was a bit of a slam for the GOP to disincentivize living in these high tax jurisdictions, as they did with the SALT taxes that we've all talked about, and the maximum $10,000 in property tax and state tax deductions. But the interesting thing is, the people that are upset about that I would argue that they're asking the wrong question or complaining about the wrong thing. What they should be saying is, why doesn't my state or jurisdiction have lower taxes? And maybe this will put some pressure on those states so that people can stop being forced to vote with their feet and moving to these more desirable jurisdictions. Thoughts?
Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. And that should be the conversation because in some ways, our country's amazing, but it's so interesting how states are so different from each other, and at some point they have to look at each other and wonder, maybe we should copy some of these economic models from other states because people seem to be flocking there.
Absolutely. And, that is an excellent feedback loop for the high tax jurisdictions like my home state for the vast majority of my life, the Socialist Republic of California. So there you go.
Well, I'm still here. So, I mean, I don't know how long you've been gone, but not much has changed, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it's only gotten worse since I left. I left in 2011. So, it is what it is, but certainly a beautiful place. Let's talk maybe generally. I remember when I lived where you live now in San Diego, I was in La Jolla, the beach areas, seeing all these signs in front yards, Flavia, saying this is a neighborhood, not a rental community, not a short-term rental community. These aren't vacation homes. And, these were obviously the residents that live there that were upset that, these transient people were coming out in and out and, for the weekend, and then they were renting people's homes, Airbnb, VRBO, whatever. What is the status of that? I remember seeing a lot of things in the local newspapers, and, this is a debate and a fight that rages on in many jurisdictions, not just San Diego. Give us a kind of a barometer on that, if you would.
Sure. Well, right now, I mean, the topic is hot and people are discussing it on both sides. Short-term rental use has a lot of support and it also has a lot of criticism. And there's a lot of the, I moved into X neighborhood because it was a residential neighborhood and I wanted to have neighbors that I got to know and that would look out for me. I'd look out for them. And I just didn't count on living next to a hotel. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of people that argue, look, unless you're in a commercial zone or mixed use zone, you really can't run a B&B or a hotel out of your home, especially when it's not just a one room being rented out where the owner retains some control and supervision, right, but when the entire place is rented out for potentially someone coming in with a huge group, throwing big parties, being loud, being in vacation mode. But then on the flip side, people say, it's really expensive to make a go of it in some of these cities. And the only way to really do this right is to increase my rental income for my investment properties, and short-term vacation rentals are the best way to do that. We have a shortage of hotels, we have a shortage of accommodations, and it's great for tourists to be able to enjoy the beaches this way and have a kitchen and not have to live out of a hotel.
No question. So you outlined kind of the debate from the the general perception of parties on both sides, which, I can really see both sides of the argument. I can. But there's a much deeper constitutional issue here. And since you're an attorney, I thought I'd bring it up. And that is the issue of property rights. And, one of the foundations of democratic societies throughout history and everywhere in the world is property rights, right? And if it's your property, you should have the right to dispose of that property. And dispose of it means rent it temporarily in any way you choose, right? So there really is a deep constitutional issue here. Maybe address that for a moment too. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. I mean, you're almost in dangerous territory asking an attorney to wax philosophical on these issues. We can go back.
How much time do we have?
Oh, I know, right? Right. No, I won't bore your audience, but when you're in law school and you start taking property classes, they go way back. The first cases you read about are, the rabbit runs from one property to the other, who owns the rabbit? It just way back when, since people could talk to each other and think, they've been fighting over territory and what's a boundary line and whose is whose, right? Mm-hmm. And who owns what. But let's talk for a second, about freedom. It's called freedom of alienation, right? Freedom to do what you want with your property, to divest yourself of it, either short term through a lease, longer term, maybe you give someone a life estate so they can own it for their lifetime and then it reverts back to you, to selling it. There's a lot of restrictions that are put in place, either sort of by contract, like if you own a condominium or a townhome, anyone who's listening who has, a planned community, if you pay HOA fees, you live in some sort of a planned community, those are contractual rules. So you actually have to follow whatever your CC&Rs, those are the recorded documents, say. If it says you can only have 2 dogs, you can only have 2 dogs. So you're sort of limited in some ways. You can only paint your house drab brown, beige, or, you can do drab vanilla, but those are your limits. And, or they can be imposed by municipalities. Zoning laws in general are these kinds of limits. If you tell somebody, well, yeah, you own this lot, but guess what? Nobody can ever live on it. It can only be used for industrial uses.
Right. And there's a zillion other look at folks. When you are in a society, you have restrictions, deal with it, right? There's mineral rights, there's air rights, there's riparian or water rights. There's all sorts of things.
Right. So, there's noise ordinances, even how loud can you be on your own property? Right. Are you allowed to use it as a dump? Are you,
Right. It
never ends in a way.
Yeah. When it comes to the short-term rental issue, factor that into your thoughts on this, if you would.
Sure, because the short-term vacation rentals is a gray area, because being able to do it in such an easy and widespread way is really sort of a technological advance, because we didn't really have the ability, say 20, 30 years ago, to widely advertise a room for rent in your home, or maybe your entire home for rent for short term, because you weren't set up like a hotel, and it wasn't easy to find people that were going to book that sort of thing. I mean, you maybe had the original B&Bs, the bed and breakfast, where a proprietor would have their home and they'd rent out some of the rooms and serve people pancakes in the morning. And perhaps you had just a lot of the informal couch surfing, and maybe you'd put a little ad in the paper for a boarder because you had an extra room, and maybe an out-of-town professor would come in and live out of your house for a few months. Yep. So it sort of began that way, and it's been around for a long, long time, but not the way it has sprung up in the last few years, probably last decade or so, because of technology and these websites and the software that now enables, an average Joe to go online, hunt down some different places they could stay and book it just as easily as they would book a room at, the Marriott or the Hilton.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So where are we going to end up on this debate? I mean, if you had to make a prediction, who's going to win? Is it going to be, the Airbnb host, or I hate to say Airbnb, it's like becoming Coke and Kleenex, which is not fair to the short-term rental host, or is it going to be the other residents who don't like it?
It's a really good question. And I don't think it'll ever be a truce where both sides just agree on a middle ground. I think it's going to be imposed on the groups by the government, because that's the way it's been going. Because it was a gray area, and because, forever you've been able to rent out your home. So landlording has been around for a long time and is pretty established. So a lot of the laws were designed to accommodate landlording and leasing out your place. And a lot of them were not limited in the way that the books were written, the law books, to specifically address at what point does a tenant become more of a hotel guest rather than a tenant. Although more and more condo and townhome associations are starting to define it as 30 days or less is short-term vacation rental, where a 30-day or more or longer lease would be more of a traditional lease, or a month-to-month lease would be a traditional lease. And so either the CC&Rs are starting to address it, the rules and regulations privately are addressing and defining these things, and then the cities are stepping in. City councils, recently I've been keeping an eye on one particular city that has been punting it forward. I mean, they don't want to make a decision and pass regulations. They keep listening to advocates on both sides. They keep doing the research. They keep getting proposals. They keep looking at legislation that could be enacted, and they just refuse
it'll just go away if we ignore it.
Right. I don't know, or maybe they're stalling to see what other cities do.
Yeah, right. They might be looking for an example.
It's a big city, so they're gonna, they're maybe afraid to make the wrong decision on it before seeing what some of the other tourist destination cities do.
Yeah, interesting stuff. If you have anything more to say about the legality, feel free. But if not, talk about some of your experiences as a property manager and a host for your own short short-term rentals, and just some best practices, any apps or technologies that you like, or, just anything.
Well, I love being involved in short-term rentals. I think it is a phenomenal way to, in some cases, double or triple the net revenue that you make from a rental for the summer season, depending where you are. I do have one that's in the ski resort town, so that one does better in the winter than the summer. But then there's one we have here down at the beach, and that one does, as you can imagine, really well in the summer months, not so well in the winter months. So there's sort of a combination. We've been playing with a lot of different strategies. Believe it or not, short-term rentals that are 2 to 3 months long for traveling professionals like travel nurses is a really great market, and generally very, high caliber tenants who are just coming into town for a few months and need a fully furnished place with utilities included.
Yeah, so everybody probably agrees with you, but where do you find that person? Is that off, like, which platform are you going to find them on?
Sure. So there's, and I can name specific platforms. Furnished Finder is a good one. There is a lot of private, closed Facebook groups for these professionals. For example, travel nurses join Facebook groups where they can chat to each other about housing options. Hey, I'm leaving San Antonio. I've got this great 3-month rental. Who else wants it? I'll pass your name to the landlord. And those are great places where you, as a landlord, as the owner of one of these locations, can put up a post, and they're usually very welcomed by the moderators of these groups, so that you can reach a very specific target of tenants who are looking for, say, the 2 to 3 month rentals. I will say, for a lot of condos where the condo HOA has really come down on short-term vacation use, so they've sent violation letters if they see that it's being used that way, or maybe it's also not zoned for vacation rental use, this might be a great option because it's fully furnished, utilities included, but you do 30-day minimums. So you can usually be in compliance with your HOA documents, even for those types of condos, and still get some great, additional rent for that unit when you look at what you're able to charge when it is fully furnished versus not. Some other tips are, I've frequented some hotel liquidation wholesalers. These are companies that when a hotel renovates completely or goes out of business, all of their inventory, beds, linen, towels, chairs, everything that you'd see in a hotel room, even some of the items from the lobby like art and mirrors and different things, get sold to these liquidators, and you can get some amazing deals on bulk towels, so you can essentially save a lot of money when furnishing your new condo or apartment, whatever it is that you're converting to short-term use.
Right. But those are, that's fairly rare, and it's probably a little bit hard to find. And I don't know, if you have a bunch of short-term rentals, yeah, that could really sort of move the needle if you got a whole bunch of furniture and stuff. But I don't know. That doesn't seem like it's going to do too much for you, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, for me, what I found is it was amazing to me the difference in how many towels certain guests use as opposed to other guests. Okay. That was one of the learning curve issues. It's like, oh, that's interesting. You really have to kind of drill down on some of these things, like what are you going to supply in the kitchen? You have to make these decisions from the onset, salt and pepper, oil, cooking items. Do you give them starter creamer in the fridge? What are you going to do? What's going to get you most stars and ratings and sort of positive reviews from guests? And there's these little things you can do where it really impresses your guests, and it's something they weren't expecting that really only maybe cost you an extra couple bucks, but made a difference in the review that you get left.
Yeah, got it. Okay, all right, good. Any technology like apps or websites you like to use or software?
Yeah,
or anything?
I'm a big fan of SimpliSafe as
the security system, right?
As a security system, okay, yeah. And everything's remote, so you can reset alarm codes remotely. You can use temporary alarm codes assigned to a specific person. I love keyless entry, where it's a keypad. And which one for keyless entry? It's kind of amazing to me, Flavia, how slow keyless entry has developed.
Folks, listen to me. You should all be just as shocked as I am that we're using keys in the modern era. Like, it's shocking we're still using keys at all for anything. I can't believe it. But even, the keyless entry for traditional residential homes, I mean, few of them are connected to Wi-Fi. There are all sorts of different concepts of them. Some where the tenant or guest has to download an app on their phone, and then the app works with the thing on a Bluetooth. And, there's just all these like different, I don't know, it's kind of amazing how that really seems rather behind.
It is. It's true. I keep it pretty simple. I haven't yet switched to the ones that are Wi-Fi enabled where you can change the actual front door lock remotely. They've been on there long enough that I got them, I think, before they had that kind of connectivity. I don't recall that being an option when these were purchased. It's just a standard, little keypad on it. I think Schlage makes them, or maybe it's Kwikset. It's one of those companies, one of the well-known ones. You get them at Home Depot. I think each deadbolt's like $100. Last time I had to buy one. And what I like is I actually ask the upcoming tenant or guest, give me a 4 to 5 digit code that is easy for you to remember. And a lot of them choose their zip code or their phone number, or I don't know what they choose, but they give me a code. And at the turnover before that guest comes in, that code is put into the door so that each guest has a unique code that will not operate once they leave. And they don't have to worry that the people before them have access or their code or can come in at night. So I think that gives everyone a little peace of mind and keeps things organized.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, good. So with Simply Safe, just for example, how are you using that in your properties? You set it up. Do you have the camera in there? Is there a camera on Simply Safe?
There
just
is
a motion
camera
sensor?
option.
Yeah, okay.
Both. There's motion sensors, there's cameras.
Right.
What I like about Simply Safe is we have certain closets that are actually padlocked away that no guest access for certain things that get stored. Mm-hmm. And Simply Safe allows you to put some sensors. Even when the alarm system is on off mode or, home mode, you can place some sensors that are always on silent alert. So you would know if somebody broke into your supply closet, or you'd be able to follow up on that because you'd get that. Or, if you live at home, you could put it on your medicine cabinet or something like that. And then if you throw a party, you know that someone was peeking in your medicine cabinet. Another nice thing is the cameras, because we have, for example, at the ski resort cabin, there's a camera pointing at the driveway. So you can sort of monitor how many cars are parked there. And you just have to disclose to people that the driveway is monitored during their stay. And that also helps cut down on pets that maybe weren't allowed because, you could see dogs and that sort of thing. And it just gives you a way to later take screenshots or prove, you had 10 vehicles there. There's a 2 vehicle max. The interior camera is something that we have the guests unplug. Yeah. Like it's part of their check-in procedure. They have to unplug the camera and then they have to replug the camera back in on their exit. Yeah. And so they see it. I mean, it's an actual plug. You see the camera turn off, so they know that it's not filming them.
Yeah, you got to be careful of that for sure.
And then there's no cameras in the bedrooms, even when nobody is staying there. Mm-hmm. And that's just how we do it. I mean, a lot of this is like you find what works for you, your stride, what makes sense to you. There's no perfect way to do it. There's no right or wrong way. I know people who use noise sensors to make sure there isn't a party. Yeah. I don't do that. I know people who, there's certain software, I don't know the name of it, maybe you do. It'll monitor how many cell phones and Wi-Fi devices are within a radius.
Oh, I don't know about that one. Yeah.
So if you have like 20 cell phones in use in your place with 4-person occupancy, you know that there's 20 folks there, and you can.
Oh, so it's actually monitoring. It doesn't have to be hooked to the Wi-Fi. It's monitoring the cell phone signals. Wow.
That's what I believe, unless it was just through the Wi-Fi. I don't have it. Saw this mentioned in a Facebook group, and again, with social media now, you can become a member of Facebook groups for fellow
help
hosts.
you. Yeah, that'll really
kind of chat
network
with you
together.
About,
sure.
And give you advice and
It's an amazing time to be alive, as I always say. Are you managing, I mean, you talked about the Simply Safe and the requiring the guest to unplug the camera, plug it back in, that's pretty granular. Are you managing any of your own short-term rental properties to the extent where you don't actually go there yourself? Even if they're local, could they just as easily be 1,000 miles away?
Yes. And I know people who, I don't do this yet. So I don't have, places that are that far. Although my furthest away rental is 3.5 hours away.
So you're not
everything
going there
is
at
done
all,
remotely.
ever, right? Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, I don't need to because this is one that we use for our own vacation use. We're there quite often. But it can all be done remotely. That's another reason to use technology so that people can get in and turn off the alarm. And, you know, you get the notification the alarm was turned off. You know, people have arrived. They can call you. Nowadays, you can FaceTime. So, I mean, if someone's having trouble using the thermostat, you can say, well, why don't you put me on FaceTime and I'll walk you through it, you know. But there is a lot of hands-on. This is not landlording. This is hosting. This is customer service. It's very different than landlording, and it's much more personal. And there's a lot more interaction between guests and hosts, especially because the guest has a higher expectation. So for them, this is in between a hotel and, you know, their rental at home. This is something somewhere in the middle. And I think we're all finding where that middle ground is and what the appropriate level of personal service versus hands-off is. And so it's going to be trial and error for all new hosts.
Good stuff. Well, I want to ask you to give out your website, tell people where they can find you, and, you know, just close with any comment you have, maybe a question I didn't ask you or anything you want to bring up.
So I've been teaching landlording at the local community college for years now, over 5 years. And there's always a wait list, and it's a great class to take in person if you happen to be in San Diego. But for anyone who's not in San Diego, but is a California landlord or has some California properties, I've put everything that's in my class online at landlordprep.com. And that's just to prep new do-it-yourself landlords or experienced ones so that you get all the practical know-how and all of the legal contracts and templates that you're going to need going forward. So come visit us at landlordprep.com. I'd love to have you in our community and as a student. And one last thing that I want to throw out there, because this is, you know, the lawyer and me putting on my lawyer hat talking, and I want to take care of people and hope that they pay attention to this. This is an important part of any new venture, is thinking about your insurance needs. And make sure that the type of insurance you have for the property that you're converting to short-term vacation rental use is covering you for that use, which for many insurance companies is considered commercial use and not true landlording. So you'll want to make sure, when I shopped around, I really only found 3 good companies that were offering that kind of coverage. And so I was able to get some quotes and bids and, you know, choose the best one for our needs. But it was something that required a little bit of footwork because the company I ordinarily use for rentals does not cover short-term vacation rental use.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good to know.
So
good
take
to
care
know.
of yourself.
Yeah. Insurance is really becoming an issue. I mean, for many years it has been. Certainly ever since Katrina. I mean, we do business all over the country, and it's insurance used to be easy. Now insurance is it's gotten a lot more complicated. But again, that's a barrier to entry for competitors, right? The more difficult anything is, the fewer people will enter the marketplace, and the bar is higher. And so there's always an offsetting effect that can benefit you. So if you're willing to do the work, then hey, you'll get the profits, and fewer people will want to do the work. So just a general concept in marketplaces. Flavia, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great insights and really interesting legal discussion as well.
Thanks, Jason. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.